The Week in Bible Prophecy, a Prophecy Watchers podcast.
Hello, I'm Gary Stearman of Prophecy Watchers. Today talking with author, lecturer, Bill Salus. And Bill Salus, welcome to Prophecy Watchers, and can't wait to talk to you.
Gary, it's great to always do shows with you. Thank you for having me on again.
Bill, you are considered an expert in Bible prophecy as it pertains to the Middle East. And of course, the Middle East is at the top of the news today. Before we talk about that and some of the details, I'd like for you to tell everybody about your huge production rate when it comes to putting out books. I'm holding one here called The Last Prophecy, but I've got a stack of Bill Salus books over here. Tell us about your library.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Gary. I've written 11 books. The one you're holding up there called The Last Prophecies is the third book in a 5-book end time series. We call it From the Here to Eternity series because what we do with this series is we take the reader from what could happen now at the present time on through the tribulation period on into the millennium and the eternal order. We kind of talk about all the unfulfilled prophecies from the present time going forward. Now, the first book in the series is called The Now Prophecies. These are prophecies that lack precondition. They could happen now at the present time. The second book is called The Next Prophecies. They have some minor preconditions, like, for instance, Ezekiel 38, I believe, would happen next. It's got a few preconditions. Israel has to be dwelling securely, without walls, bars, nor gates. I identify all those preconditions inside of the book. That book also talks about the gap after the rapture, before the tribulation, and gets into the prophecies that are coming soon, but have a few preconditions. Then the third book, The Last Prophecies, the one you held up, deals with the prophecies that happened in the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, the trumpet judgments, etc., the two witnesses in Jerusalem. The fourth book is the final prophecies. These are the prophecies that happened in the Great Tribulation, the second half of the tribulation period. And then we conclude the series with the Millennium Prophecies and the New Jerusalem. It talks about what happens when Jesus returns. He mops up the mess from the tribulation. He takes a 75-day interval period to do lots of things to restore the earth for habitation. And then we get into the New Jerusalem that comes down in the eternal order as well. So it's a good book, and we have DVDs to go with it. We also have it all on a thumb drive also for people who are concerned about the loved ones who might get left behind. They can have this thumb drive with all this valuable information on it, Gary.
Very good, Bill. And before we get started on the big topic today, Bill, I would just like to say that the work that you've done is something that I really appreciate. I pick up your books from time to time and just read portions of the books. And today, the news is in the Middle East. In fact, October 7th, I think, changed the world. I think you'd probably agree with me. At the time, we thought, this little straggly band of people coming into a party zone in Israel after dark, and we thought, what in the world's going on here? Little did we know what a large event this would turn out to be. And as we speak, it's getting larger. And I wanted you to talk about the force that we're hearing about in the news as we're sitting talking to each other right now. And that word is Hezbollah. A lot of people may have heard on the news that Hezbollah is doing this, Hezbollah is planning this. What exactly is Hezbollah, and can you find references to what they're doing in Scripture?
Well, that's a good starting point, because right now the focus really is on the northern border of Israel, with the clashes going on between Israel and Hezbollah that look like they're going to upscale into a full-scale war. And that's probably important to talk about who Hezbollah is to get a grasp on the danger that they present to Israel. Hezbollah means the party of God. It was established, it's a Shia Islamist political party and militant group established by Iran. Their Secretary General, many of our viewers are familiar with, is Hassan Nasrallah. And he's been there since 1992, I believe. and they are very dangerous. They're one of Iran's most significant proxies. They had a war with Israel in 2006, whereby they lobbed 4,000 missiles into northern Israel for 34 days, causing many Israelis to dwell in bomb shelters in the northern part of Israel for that entire month. And then there was a UN resolution 1701 that came out and said that Hezbollah needs to dismantle their arsenal and stay to the north of what's called the Litani River. And of course, they violated that. And now they have approximately 150,000 missiles pointed at Israel. Some of them are precision guided. They've got a full bank of targets that they're aiming at Israel. Matter of fact, just recently, a few days prior to this show that we're talking about, Hezbollah sent a drone over the Haifa area and had 9 minutes worth of footage that they showed publicly to show Israel that, hey, listen, we can get into your sensitive areas, especially the Haifa area. One of the targets they were looking at was the Raphael military factory there, one of the main concerns of Israel. So Hezbollah is a real serious threat, and they've been lobbing lots of missiles, I think over 5,000 now, into northern Israel. They've got many of the northern Israel towns evacuated. There's roughly about 60 to 80,000 Israelis that have been evacuated and out of their homes for almost 8 to 9 months now. It's a major problem because Israel has to get them back into their homes, but they can't go back into their homes as long as Hezbollah's threat looms large. And now that the talks are, the concerns are, and we can rifle off some headlines here, that this is going to go into a massive war, not just a conflict, a skirmish that's been going on, but a massive conflict that will probably draw in Iran, probably draw in Syria with its chemical weapons, upscale the Houthis attacks. They've got precision-guided missiles also. They're still very active in the Red Sea right now. There's Shiite militias in Iraq. The Hamas, of course, are a proxy of Iran, as well as there are in the West Bank, there are proxies of Iran as well.
I've got a quick question. What is the relationship between the people who are running the Gaza operation and Hezbollah, or are they do they work closely together, or are they two separate groups, widely separated?
They're two separate groups. I don't know that I'd say they're widely separated. Hamas is a primarily Palestinian group that governs the Gaza area since I think around 2005. They are Sunni Muslims, but for some reason, because of the common hatred they have with the Shiite group Hezbollah and Iran, they've embraced Iran as a sponsor for their terrorism. So they have meetings together. They have had many meetings together with Hezbollah and Iran and Syria, Bashar al-Assad. So they're part of Iran's proxy network, but they are distinctly different. And of course, they're taking a shellacking right now with respect to Israel's war with them. But at this point in time, that war now seems to be shifting more toward the north, and Israel's not done with that war. They're still in Rafah, of the southern Gaza area, and they're doing a lot of business there, taking out a lot of terrorists. I think they've killed about 550 to 650 Hamas terrorists in that Rafah area. But now their attention is being shifted to the north, and I think that'll be phase 2 of Iran's plan, a massive war with Hezbollah and Israel.
Now, you've written the books that we showed just a minute ago, and written in succession, each one building on the one that went before. And what I'd like to ask you about your books, when you look back to the books you've written, were you spot on, or did you miss in a degree or two, or a degree or three, left or right? And how are things working according to what you've been writing all these years?
Well, I'd like to think I was spot on. Of course, a lot of the information prophetically is going to happen even after the rapture of the church. So, we won't know that except for what we see from the mezzanine seats in heaven. But a lot of the things in the Now Prophecies book and the Next Prophecies book are stage setting, dealing with the Arab-Israeli conflict in Psalm 83, a lot of the Israeli Defense Forces prophecies. That's another interesting thing. I was just thinking about this, Gary, because I cover this extensively in the Now Prophecies book, is the Israeli Defense Forces that we see burgeoning into a strong army. They exist in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. We're told in Ezekiel 37:10, as we talk about the dry bones vision in that Ezekiel 37, it pictures the Jewish people dispersed out of their homeland in a Holocaust type condition. It says a time when they said our bones are dry, our hope is lost, and we ourselves are cut off. Ezekiel is told to prophesy, and these bones stand up on their feet, and it says they'll come back into the land of Israel and become an exceedingly great army. And in the Now Prophecies book, I write about several prophecies where the Israeli Defense Forces are taking to task and winning the wars of the Arab countries around them, Hamas included, and Hezbollah also is involved in a couple prophecies. Hopefully, we have time to talk about. But as I see this, and also Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus,
Yes.
Israeli Defense Forces are involved in that. So I would just like to say, as an important pause here for the viewers, when you see the Israeli Defense Forces, and they're more and more in the news now, especially now that they're going to probably go full throttle against Hezbollah, realize, hey, they exist in fulfillment of Bible prophecy, and they exist in fulfillment of Bible prophecy to accomplish the defeat of their Arab enemies around them who despise them. Not involved in Ezekiel 38, that God stops that supernaturally, and they're not involved in Armageddon because in the first 2.5 years of Armageddon, they're living in a peace confirmed by the false covenant by the Antichrist in Daniel 9:27. And then in the second half of the tribulation, they're fleeing for their lives. So right now, when we see the Israeli Defense Forces growing, they're a great army, but they're going to be an exceedingly great army after they take out their Arab enemies in fulfillment of multiple prophecies, Gary. I think that's a phenomenal thing to watch for us interested in prophecy. The Israeli Defense Forces right now, when we look at them, we should look at them through the lens of biblical prophecy.
Now, you've got Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and come down to Lebanon and Jordan. Israel is literally surrounded on the northeast, the north, and the northwest. And when you look at the background, that they seem either to have nuclear weapons. We talk a lot about Iran and nuclear weapons, or they're obtaining them from suppliers in the Far East. We don't know, but everybody is now talking about nuclear war. And of course, Scripture talks about, for example, the destruction of Damascus, which is converted into a ruinous heap, which sounds nuclear to me. Where are we when it comes to those nukes and their development and their threat?
Well, I think they're going to be pulled off the shelf here shortly, especially Israel's shelf. And I believe that will happen in fulfillment of the Isaiah 17 prophecy. I'll talk about that for a minute. And then I want to talk about the concerns with Iran's nuclear program as well, because it's rapidly advancing. In fact, let me start there. I'll just take a couple of headlines here. This came out in May 19th of this year. This is from Grossi, the IAE lead inspector for the IAEA. And of course, they've been censored out. They can no longer get into Iran to do their job that they were supposed to do with the JCPOA in 2015. Of course, Trump backed out of that in 2018. And meanwhile, Iran has moved full throttle with their nuclear program. He said this back in May 19th, Iran has never been closer to achieving a nuclear bomb. Grossi told the press after his visit to Iran. It is estimated that it may be a matter of weeks and not months away. Now, that was on May 19th, weeks but not months away. This article just came out on Bill Koenig's website today, watch.org, which I recommend to your viewers for daily news. We also have a daily news site with prophetic implications.
Yes.
To the biblical lens, and that's called prophecyheadlines.com, prophecyheadlines.com. But it says here, Iran set to dramatically increase uranium enrichment. This is from JNS News Source today. It says an expansion underway at Iran's Fordo enrichment plant could allow the regime to accumulate several bombs worth of nuclear fuel every month. So, I mean, now we're talking about several bombs per month. Grossi said they're not months away, they're weeks away. Some of us believe Iran already has explosive-ready nuclear weapons, and it's just a matter of time until they want to put them on their hypersonic missile warheads, which they have. They have a hypersonic missile that travels 5 times the speed of sound. It can carry a nuclear warhead and can get to Israel in 400 seconds, which is 6.66 minutes. So this is a very livid threat and very concerning. As far as the nuclear scenario with Israel, they're worst kept secret is their nuclear program. France helped them establish it after becoming a nation. Some of us estimate they have 200 nuclear weapons. That could be on the high side, but remember, one nuclear weapon can take out a city on its own. And we find out, and plus they've got strategic and tactical capabilities with their nuclear weapons. So when we look at the Damascus scenario, Damascus is the capital of Syria. And Syria is a vowed proxy, actually an agent country of Iran, got chemical weapons. And they're going to be involved, in my estimation, in a proxy war with Hezbollah and the other proxies against Israel. And Israel's going to find itself taking a hit. We're told in Isaiah 17:4-6 that Israel takes a hit in this conflict. And I'll explain that in just a moment. Because they find themselves engaged in a prison rules war with thousands of missiles coming from the northeast out of Syria, from the north from Lebanon, probably some more out of the Gaza, depending on what's left of the Hamas at that time, plus missiles coming from Iran. We know Iran sent 320 missiles at Israel back in April. So, Israel's going to find itself in a prison rules fight.
If I can interrupt for a minute, you mentioned the 300 plus missiles that were sent by Iran. And everybody I talk to, Bill, says that was a miracle of God for Israel to have knocked those down the way it happened, sequentially, in front of the whole world. Everybody saw that on TV, either live or slightly delayed television, and everybody said this was no doubt a miracle from God. How do you react to that?
Well, I would tend to agree with that. Of course, the help came from the coalition of the United States, the UK, Saudi Arabia was involved on some level. Of course, Israel's missile defense systems. I would have to look at that was more providential. I mean, I would think basically God is protecting Israel at this point. God is going to protect them on several prophecies in the future. And I would say that 99% of those were intercepted. You know, those missiles were aimed at targets that would have done severe damage to key locations inside of Israel. And it was an amazing failure on behalf of Iran. But at the same token, I think at this point, Iran was ready at that time. They had to be ready at that time to bring forward. If they would have been successful, they would have had to start bringing in Hezbollah's missiles and Syria's chemical weapons and things like that. But because they failed so dramatically, I think things sort of stalled. But I don't think they're going to stall much more. And I think when we talk about Isaiah 17, Israel finds itself in a prison rules war, takes casualties. They're prepared for this. They've done drills preparing for this. And they're going to have to pull out a nuclear weapon because they're going to have no choice. One of the concerns even America's seeing right now is that in a massive war with Hezbollah, Israel's missile defense systems will get depleted and will need to be replenished in a short order because Hezbollah has so many missiles that can come at Israel, as does Syria, as does Iran. So what's going to happen, in my estimation, it says in Isaiah 17:1 that it's a burden of the Lord against Damascus. Behold, Damascus will cease from being a city. It will be a ruinous heap. It will be reduced to rubble. And Isaiah 17:9 tells us that desolation happens because of the children of Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces. And the reason we think it's potentially nuclear, Gary, is Isaiah 17:14. It concludes Isaiah's prophecy. Says that one night you see him speaking of Damascus in the masculine pronoun, but in the morning he is no more. This is a portion of those who plunder us and those who rob us, which points out that Israel is doing it in self-defense. Overnight, though, one night we're going to see Damascus. In the morning, it will be gone. It will be no longer be a continuously inhabited city of 4,000 years, the capital of Syria. It's going to be gone, and it's going to probably be nuclear. When that happens, when Israel pulls out a nuclear weapon, the world will take notice, believe me.
Wow. Now, here's questions going around right now. People are talking about Turkey, and there is a big divide of opinion about the role that Turkey will play, being to the north, of course, a little bit. But really, if you look at Turkey, it extends all the way east to the Caspian Sea and to Israel's north. What role is Turkey going to play in all this?
Well, we need to keep a keen eye out for Turkey. Of course, they don't like Israel. They're very pro-Hamas. They are involved in the Ezekiel 38 prophecy. There's two main prophecies that I'm watching for. One, I believe, leads to the other. One would be Psalm 83, where you would have an Arab group of countries. I read about this in the Now Prophecies book. They want to come together in a confederacy to destroy the nation of Israel, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. And they form an inner circle of countries that share common borders with Israel, that have been Israel's notorious enemies from time immemorial, including Hezbollah to the north with Lebanon and Syria, Iraq. Of course, you've got the Iranian proxies are in these countries, the Gaza, the Palestinians of the West Bank. You've got Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt. Now, Jordan and Egypt have temporary peace treaties with Israel, but those treaties will be voided out according to prophecies that will show the Israeli Defense Forces are winning wars. That would be in Jeremiah 49, verse 2 with Jordan, and Isaiah 19, verses 16 to 18 with Egypt. So those are temporary, but that's not including Turkey. That's an inner circle of countries, but the outer ring of countries includes Turkey, and that's Ezekiel 38 prophecy. They don't share common borders with Israel. They're not involved in Psalm 83. They're not listed. Ezekiel is very clear about who is involved in Ezekiel 38, and Turkey's right at the top of the list with Russia under the banner. Turkey's under the banner of Meshach and Tubal. Of course, you got Iran as listed there as Persia in Ezekiel 38, verse 5. You also have Ethiopia, Libya, some of the North African countries, some of the breakaway Soviet Union countries, probably some of the stands, Kazakhstans, etc. That's another different prophecy in itself, and that's a massive prophecy that's stage setting. I put that together in the Next Prophecies book.
Now, another question. You comment, and I've heard you comment on this, that the IDF is at max right now. That they're fighting on several small fronts. But you have mentioned that you think that Hezbollah is going to try to spread the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, so thin that they will not be able to defend themselves. Where do we stand there?
Well, I actually wrote an article. Let me get my notes on this. I wrote an article in your Prophecy Watchers magazine. I think it came out in February, if I'm not mistaken, talking about Iran's overall, things to look ahead to in 2024. We also reflected in 2023 in that article. And among the things I talked about was a multifaceted, multi-phased war that Iran would orchestrate through its proxies. Phase one has been going on since October 7th with Hamas, and again, October 8th, Hezbollah joined in to fight on the north. And that's, of course, when all those Israeli citizens were evacuated and still evacuated. But here's some of the things I pointed out that phase one was important to accomplish, and Hezbollah has accomplished that successfully and can now move on to phase two. So first of all, they want to spread the IDF thin by diverting troops and important military resources to the north of Israel, away from the Gaza war campaign, so that Israel is now mobilizing more and more now to the north because of this. They wanted to deplete some of Israel's missile defense systems, namely the Iron Dome. They have been doing that. Israel needs more of those, and they do a massive barrage in a war. Israel's Iron Dome will certainly be depleted. 3, they wanted to create danger and chaos and hysteria among the civilians in the north, causing evacuation. When these evacuations happen, remember that most Israelis have military experience because of their mandatory draft. So when these 80-some thousand people were evacuated from the north, it opened the area for Hezbollah to do a ground invasion. And to do a ground invasion without combatants coming against them, they would just simply be doing a war with the troops of Israel. So that's a possibility. Now, Israel is also talking about a ground invasion into southern Lebanon. Now, this stuff is all relatively recent news. The other thing, too, is that it poses a refugee burden on Israel and really hurts the tourism, of course, and that's been going on as well. So all these things have been successful, and meanwhile, it also gives the international community more time to rally against Israel. It's so much anti-Semitism now, especially the United Nations. And lastly, it gives Iran an opportunity to develop their nuclear weapons and put them on warheads and send them at Israel. And I think that was all part of phase one. I think when Iran came out in April and sent those missiles over to Israel, they were ready for phase two. Although I think phase two was stalled, like you said, maybe it was an act of God. But at this point, I think phase two is about to happen, and Israel's gearing up for it. And it would start with this war with Hezbollah. Now, it's interesting. I'll just take a moment since I'm on a roll here, Gary. Some headlines here. Israel approves. These are recent headlines that we need to be watching for. Israel approves an operational plan for Lebanon's offensive, says the army. In other words, Israel is prepared and approved a plan to go into a massive war with Hezbollah. Times of Israel says on June 18th, in an open threat, Hezbollah publishes drone footage in sites in northern Israel. We talked about that drone footage over Haifa. Hezbollah is actually threatening Cyprus as well because Cyprus has airport there that could help Israel with military activities. Anyway, the list goes on. There's no shortage of headlines right now, and they're all geared toward a war with Israel and Hezbollah.
Now,
The Hamas war is almost on the back pages anymore compared to what's going on with Hezbollah.
I have a quick question, and that is concerning the West. America, in particular, has been very critical of what Israel is doing. I'm seeing genuine depression when you watch Israeli television, for example. There's no chin up and good cheer. There's people are very fearful. They're worried, and in particular, they seem to be worried because the West is withdrawing its traditional support. Where's that going?
Well, under the current Biden administration, it's continuing to go, in my estimation, in the wrong direction. Starting with, and yes, we were there helping intercept those missiles, and the Biden administration is quick to point that out. Helped Israel on that massive assault with those 320 missiles coming at them. But he's withheld ammunition and important military equipment from getting into the Rafah conflict that Israel has going on with the Hamas and the Rafah. Benjamin Netanyahu has come out and confronted the Biden administration about that. Now, the Biden administration seems to be considering, as we speak now, withholding more because they think that will prevent Israel from going into an escalated war to the north. I mean, the rationale is ridiculous. And it goes on to say basically, Netanyahu is basically saying you're going to cause a war. So on the one hand, Biden's thinking we can prevent an escalation by withholding ammunition, et cetera. But Netanyahu's going, no, you're going to force us to go into a massive war and ultimately pull out their best weapons, probably nuclear as well. An article just recently came out today that the U.S. is worried that Israel's aerial defense system won't stand up against a major Hezbollah attack. So see, even America is concerned about this and Israel's defense capabilities. And maybe by trying to control the flow of weaponry into Israel from America, Biden maybe thinks he can, control and dictate the terms of what's going to happen between Israel and Hezbollah. Matter of fact, the envoy Amos Hochstein went over recently to Lebanon and tried to say, listen, this has gone on too far. It's time to stop. We need to come together with you and Israel, et cetera. And right now the reports are, that was just a few days ago, that has failed miserably. In other words, we got no diplomatic say in this situation, and we can try to leverage missile weapons and things like that. But it's best if we just stay out of this and support Israel, because God will bless us if we do. But right now, I'm concerned that we're getting on the wrong side with these kind of moves.
Bill, the times are very strange right now, very unstable on the world front. And I have seen so many books published lately on the rapture of the church and the nearness of it. And we're undergoing another round of excitement about the rapture of the church. What's your response to that?
Well, I am a pre-tribulation rapture believer. I am so pre-trib, I don't buy post toasties or green bananas. Now, that's humor that I've gotten from Arnold Fruchtenbaum and others. But the point is, Gary, I think this is a legitimate topic right now because as we see all the end time signs converging, the Middle East we've been talking about is just one of them, but there's many other things too with the World Economic Forum, the cashless society that can happen now with the digital technologies, the cryptocurrencies. There's also the AI, et cetera. And as we look at all these things converging, we have to realize that among the top of the list that we should be looking for is our blessed hope, and that's the return of Jesus Christ to pull his bride out. He's yearning to do that. He wants to get us out of here before the tribulation begins, the wrath that gets poured out there. But this could happen. The rapture could happen at any given time. It's imminent. I think it could be the next thing to happen, although there could be some other pre-tribulation things that could happen also. So the rapture is pre-tribulation.
Now, do you believe that some of the events that we see in the Psalms, in Ezekiel, in Daniel, in the minor prophets, do you believe that the things that seem to be unfolding in the Middle East right now have any bearing on the near approach of the rapture?
Well, I do. I don't see those things. For instance, Psalm 83, the Arab-Israeli conflict. I don't see Ezekiel 38, the Gog and Magog invasion, as dealing with the wrath of God that we need to be spared from, which we're promised to be delivered from that, of course, in multiple places. But I do see them as signposts that we're getting near to the end times of the tribulation period. So I think Psalm 83, I'm going to give you, your viewers, my sequence of what I think could happen. And of course, I'm speculating. And the rapture, of course, is the wild card. It could happen at any given time. But here's what I'm going to suggest. I think Psalm 83 and the Arab-Israeli conflict and all the related prophecies to that, and those would be involving Hamas and Hezbollah and Jordan and other prophecies. I write about them in the Now Prophecies book. I think that could happen. And what could actually happen prior to that would be the destruction of Damascus in Isaiah 17, which could lead to the Psalm 83 conflict. I think even maybe before that, let's go one step forward in front of that, could be the prophecy of Elam in Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 34 through 39. We've talked about this before, Gary, in your studio. Actually, we talked about it once upon a time when your studio was in your house before you went to the Prophecy Watcher studio. But it goes way back, and that could happen. That's a disaster in Iran on the west coast, where Iran's Bashar nuclear reactor is, their underground missile silos, their underground airport, their portable rocket launchers. It's a strategic target. That could be the disaster. That's a prophecy. That could lead to Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus. That could lead to Psalm 83. And then ultimately, after Psalm 83, I think Ezekiel 38 would happen because Israel could be dwelling securely without the threat of Arabs around them. And that's a prerequisite of Ezekiel 38. Now, I think all these are pre-tribulational events, including the rapture. Now, where would the rapture fall in? In my estimation, I hope it's next, but I would tell you honestly, it very well could be, I think, between Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38. But again, I'm just guessing at that, of course.
Well, I think it's very interesting that Vladimir Putin is in this mix. And the word is that Vladimir Putin does not want to get involved in an atomic war. Now, whether that's true or not, but that's the speculation that you hear on the news. And the pundits are all saying they don't believe Russia is going to get involved right now. What do you think?
Well, I think Russia, when you say get involved right now, clarify that. You mean involved in the Middle East, per se, and what's going on right now? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I think they are going to be careful. They're going to get their feet in there as much as they can. They've got missile defense systems already set up in places like Syria and with Hezbollah and of course Iran. But I think they're also got to be careful because they don't want to spread themselves too thin. They've already got the West barreling down on them in the Ukraine situation. They're concerned about that. That isn't going real well for them. It's been going on for a long time now. I think when you look at Russia and Ezekiel 38, which is sort of the leader of that belligerent coalition, as most of us would teach, what kind of Russia are we looking at there? I mean, why do they need so many big friends to form this massive coalition to go against a little tiny Israel that's about the size of New Jersey? You're talking about if this were to happen today, and I don't think it's quite ready to happen today, about 2.5 million troops assembled by the coalition of Russia, Turkey, Iran, and the rest of them, coming against about 176,000 or so Israeli soldiers. So it's just such a David and Goliath scenario. But I think Israel at the time when this happens, and Russia at the time when this happens, you had a couple different things in play. First of all, the Israel of today is not going to be the Israel at that time. They're going to be stronger. The exceedingly great army will be have shown itself. They will have taken out the Arab threat around them, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. And I think Russia at that point in time says, okay, look, Israel is now expanding. They've got plunder and booty that we need. Our economies are struggling. let's come together. And a lot of those countries, by the way, in Ezekiel 38 are Muslim. So Russia will feed off of that. They'll put together this coalition. And Russia, I think Russia is not the same at that point. I think Russia needs help to come against that Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces. Of course, they'll form this formidable coalition that's even too formidable for the American troops or the Israeli Defense Forces, because we don't find them in that prophecy. We find God in that prophecy, supernaturally stopping that with a great earthquake, pestilence, fire, brimstone, flooding rains, great hailstones. So I think basically my guess would be Russia's not going to be the same by that time. They're going to need help. They're probably going to be continuing to be spread thin with Ukraine. So I think personally they're going to be a little careful about diving too deep into the Middle East right now.
The United Arab Emirates and other countries in the vicinity are oil wealthy, and oil has come to play a huge part in politics, global politics, particularly since our president made the decisions he did to cut back oil production on our part, which has destabilized the Middle East to a great degree. Where do you think that fits?
Well, regarding the United Arab Emirates and those GCC, Gulf Cooperative Council states over there that hug the Persian Gulf on the opposite side of Iran, which would be UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar. Apart from Saudi Arabia, I don't know that those other countries are deeply involved in Bible prophecy. Some people, I think even yourself, Gary, might say, well, they could be part of the Dedan, Sheba and Dedan thing in Ezekiel 38. I think Dedan is Saudi Arabia, but it could also maybe include some of those countries. I think they're basically at risk here because of Iran's potential nuclear program. And I don't know that they really play much in Bible prophecy, but I do think oil is going to be important. And that may be part of the hooks in the jaw type of thing when Israel it's already exploiting its natural gas that it's getting out of the Mediterranean Sea. They may be able to take over some oil after Psalm 83, some territories with oil. I think that could be the hooks in the jaw, the natural resources and things that may come into play at that time. But I don't really know much about whether or not oil is going to play a major role in this war right now.
You write that Hezbollah and Hamas and others are in the business of creating hysteria. They want war, and they're trying everything they can to kick off a war because they think that God is on their side. And that's another story. We could talk for maybe a half hour on that one, but Hamas, Hezbollah, and other groups really are trying to kick up hysteria in the Middle East, and we see that right now.
Well, we do, and there's no greater way to create hysteria than what they've already been doing, especially of recent. That massacre on October 7th cleared out that whole southern area around Gaza. There's evacuees there as well. They're scared to go back. They created hysteria to the north with Hezbollah. 60 to 80,000 evacuated Israelis living in suitcases in many places and hotels. They're scared to go back. And meanwhile, the hysteria that's being created by these terrorist populations or proxies of Iran is gaining momentum in the international community as they're very concerned. We've got everybody wanting to get into the fray. Certain places like, what was it, Italy and Norway and another place said, we want to recognize the Palestinian state. The Biden administration is trying to control the terms of the war. Anti-Semitism is erupting throughout the world, especially on American university campuses. So basically this hysteria is drawing so many people into it internationally and in America, and many of them, unfortunately, are on the wrong side of history because basically when the dust settles, Israel is going to prevail. Their Israeli defense forces are going to defeat their enemies around them. They're going to become a greater, safer Israel, and that's the Israel that Russia is going to want to come after. So I would encourage people to realize what the Bible has a lot to say about what's going on, and basically the end analysis is Israel is going to prevail. The Israeli defense forces are going to win their wars, and the Middle East is going to look entirely different here, and probably in a short order.
Bill Salus, author of several books, and by the way, Bill, I should point out that you're always welcome to contribute to our magazine, The Prophecy Watcher. We appreciate your writing and your point of view. You have put, I think, probably as much or more study into the Middle East as anyone writing on the subject of Bible prophecy. And as we kind of draw to a close here, our Christian friends who have been listening to this conversation, what would you tell them right now? What's the maximum, the thought that you're having right now that probably plays the greater role in your thinking than any other thought you're having?
I think it's time to get busy. It's time to get busy with our walk with the Lord, with studying His Word, especially the prophetic word, to use it to evangelize. We're about to be taken off this planet in the rapture. And when we're gone, we can't help our loved ones or evangelize to those in our neighborhood or sphere of influences that we're concerned about, our family. So we need to get busy with this information. And this information, God had a lot to say about what's going on, and it's not His fault if we're not getting the memo across from the pulpits. We need to, these kind of shows that we're doing here, Gary, and the conferences you guys put together, your magazine, etc. I applaud all that, because Christians today need to realize, hey, you're in the end times. You're living in prophetic times. You're in the end times. God wants you to know what's going on. One, to authenticate His sovereignty to you, to build your relationship with Him. Two, to equip you for the days in which you live. And three, to evangelize to the lost, because we're living on borrowed time. I would kind of close with, I think it was Jan Markell that said, don't fear, things are not falling apart, but things are falling in place exactly as the Bible prophecies predicted. So we're living in the end times. It's an exciting time to be alive if you know what we know and what we're sharing with you. But it's a fearful time for those who don't know, because judgment is going to be coming, starting in the Middle East, but also it's going to be coming in the tribulation period over the world. So right now we live in a very precious point of time in the church age. Not much time left. Redeem the time. Walk straight and right with the Lord, and prepare yourselves to evangelize to your loved ones, because the time is short at this point.
Well, it may be the role of the church to bring some kind of stability and peace to a world otherwise gone insane, because that's the direction it seems to be heading. And the role of the church has always been to bring comfort and peace and the truth about God and His relationship with the world politic, which, by the way, is one mass confusion. I don't think any human being can really understand what's going on right now, but God knows, right?
Yeah, I was on a show recently, and this kind of topic came up. And what have I learned through all the years of my research and study about the geopolitics and things? And I said, one thing I've learned after 20 plus years now is that the world political leaders are essentially clueless. They have absolutely no idea about God's plan for Israel and His plan for humanity. And it's a sad state of affairs, but at this point in time, we have the Bible, we have God's prophetic word, we have our Savior and the Holy Spirit who indwells us. So we don't need to be stuck in the secular worldview. We've got the biblical narrative and the prophetic perspective in our arsenal.
Bill, may the Lord bless your work, and we'll talk again soon. And we appreciate you.
Thanks, Gary.
See you soon.
See you soon.